Hello, this is chapter 10 of John Masefield's The Box of Delights. Perhaps, he thought, if I look into the box, I may meet with Herne the Hunter again, and if I do, I'll ask about Arnold of Tody, for he is the cause of all this trouble. It's his box, and if he had it again, perhaps all this hunt for it and scrobbling folk would stop. So here goes. This time as he opened the box, it seemed to him that he was looking between two columns on which the snow lay thick. Here and there on the stone the snow had partly melted and had again frozen so that little icicles dangled from the ledges. Kay passed between these columns into a wintry wood full of snow where even the rabbits had turned white. In front of him was what seemed like the bole of a ruined tree, but it was Herne the Hunter clad in some pelt, powdered with snow. "I know what you want, Kay," he said. "You want to know about Arnold of Tody. He went back into the past and was caught in it somewhere, and is lost, never able to get back. And the past, Kay," he added, "is a big book with many, many pages. If you go looking for Arnold in the past, who knows if you will ever find him?" "I have this box. Won't this box help me find him?" "No," Herne said. "Arnold left that box behind him because he made another way of getting back which he liked better." "What part of the past do you think he went back to?" Kay said. "As to that," Herne answered, "there's one part that everybody goes to, and that's the Trojan War." "Could I get down to the Trojan War to ask about him?" Kay asked. "I could get you there," Herne said, "but you must leave the box behind you, and I strongly advise you do no such thing. You may never get back if once you get there." "I expect I could get back," Kay said. "Well, in a way it won't be you that goes. It will only be a shadow of you. The rest will be asleep. The you that goes will cast no shadow. People won't like that, you'll find." "I shan't mind," Kay said. "They may," Herne said. "And they're a pretty rough crowd in parts of the past," Herne said. "But if you must, you must." He beckoned to Kay, and Kay felt that he became two Kays, one asleep at Seekings, the other beside Herne. He noticed then that a sea had come almost up to where they stood. There, running into the sand at his feet, was a strange black ship, looking rather like a dolphin. The captain had a curious breastplate of some blue metal, on which a wolf had been inlaid in gold. "If you were for Troy, step aboard," the captain said. Kay stepped on board. The rowers began to row. The sail filled, and the ship leaped like a dolphin. The men sang as they rowed, passing island after island, all bright in the sun, till presently they were beached on the sandy shingle between two rivers. Kay saw on a little hill beyond them the wall of some castle from which a dense smoke was rising. As he went towards this, he saw soldiers also wearing blue breastplates with inlaid walls. These were driving down parties of unhappy men, women, and children laden with packages of booty. "Goodness," Kay said, "this is really Troy, and I have come just too late. The city has been sacked." Kay saw what he took to be the tower over the Scaean gate, and looked about him at the desolation. The doors of all the houses were open. The things which had not been worth carrying away lay smashed or torn. There was nobody left in the city except a stray cat or two, mewing in misery. The pigeons which had once nested in the temples were flying about in the smoke, and as Kay went up towards them a gust of wind caught the fire, which burst out with a savage crackle and fierce flame. He noticed that an old crone was sitting at the corner of the ways. She looked as though she had been too old to be taken away. "Are you looking for Arnold of Toady?" she said. "He was here, but he is gone." "Where did he go?" Kay asked. "He went with the wolves," she said. "Has he gone long?" "A matter of 500 years ago," she said. It did not seem very hopeful to Kay, but he went back down the hill and across the ford to the beach, and there, drawing near the shore, was a boat manned by long-haired, dirty men, most of whom wore earrings. The boat had a name painted on her bows in clumsy red letters. Presently, as she drew near, Kay read this as Sea Wolf. As the boat touched the shore, the man who was steering hailed him. "Are you sick of the Mediterranean?" "We are." Kay said he did not know very much about it, but the man said, "You will if you stay. Come on board." Perhaps Kay would not have gone aboard their cutter if he had not seen that a party of spearmen wearing breastplates stamped with the images of wolves were slinking down the beach as though to seize him. He did not like the looks of the cutter crew, but these wolf-men terrified him. So he climbed aboard the cutter, which at once shoved off into the sea. The wolf-men turned back. Plainly they had been after him. Kay saw that the cutter was heading for a ship in the channel. As he sat in the stern sheets looking at the crew, he found their eyes fixed on him. He had seen a cat looking at a little bird with that sort of look. He had heard that snakes will look at mice with that sort of look. He looked a little anxiously towards the ship. There was a sort of green grass at her waterline, and the paint had long since gone from her sides. It seemed, too, that she had been in action not long before, for splinters had been torn off her planking, leaving white wounds, sometimes jagged and irregular, sometimes round like the shot which had caused them. She was rolling slightly to the swell, her gear giving out a melancholy creak as she rolled. One of the rowers in the boat spat some tobacco juice over his shoulder and said, "She creaks just like old Bell after he is hanged in chains." The boat ran alongside the ship, and the stroke oar said, "Up with you, young master." Kay clambered up the ladder to the deck. The ship had guns both sides of a deck, and on her bulwarks little swivel guns which could be turned in any direction. On the quarter-deck just above the ship's wheel was a scrollwork which had once been gilded. Within it was a painting of the ship as she had been on her setting forth, gay with paint and hung with colours. Her name had been painted underneath in white letters. The Bristol Merchant. Somebody had run a streak of red paint across this name and had painted over it a new name. The Royal Fortune. "I see what this is," Kay thought. "She is a merchant ship which has been captured by pirates." He had not time to think about his discovery, for with a salvo of guns the ship began to sail. Malta drooped astern in half a minute, and Gibraltar a moment later. Very soon the ship was in the tropics, not far from land. There in the water were scarlet seaweeds, rainbow-coloured fishes, bits of wreck with coral stuck on them, and branches with strange leaves and fruits. Kay kept away from the evil-looking men who smoked short clay pipes and sipped rum as they sat on deck dicing. Soon Kay saw an island rising ahead, and as he watched it intently, he was surprised to find one of the crew intently watching himself. Suddenly this man, who had a bloated mouth with only 2 front teeth in it, seized him by the collar. "I got you," he said. "Here he is, boys. Here's another of 'em." The captain, hearing this commotion, turned and said, "What is it there?" "It's another captain," the man said. "I've been watching him for some time, and he's got no shadow." "Bring him up into the sun," the captain said. They brought Kay up into the sun and stood round with their pistols drawn, turning about him so that he caught the light. "It's true," he said. "He's got no shadow, no more than that other one we had." "Well, we'll soon get him," one of the men said, drawing his cutlass and running his thumb along the edge. "One good whack with this," he said. "It'll let the shadow out that he's got tucked away inside him." "Hold on there, brother," another pirate said. "That's death. It's well known sure death to cut a man with no shadow. Hang the sculpin up by the heels till the shadow falls out of him, I say." Then another man said that it was well known that the thing to do with a person of that sort was to shoot him with a blessed bullet. This sentiment met with general applause, but when they came to apply it to Kay, they found that they had not a blessed bullet. In fact, they found that the only blessed thing on board was a church candlestick, which had been in use so long for lighting pipes and warming rum that the general vote was that it was probably, by this time, not blessed, and that in any case it would be a pity to spoil the candlestick for a tuppenny sculpin with no shadow. "Wait now," the captain said. "Once before we had one of this sort with no shadow, but we found a way of dealing with him. We marooned him on the Tiburones. There are the Tiburones. I say that we should maroon this man there too." Kay heard one of the men say in an Irish voice, "That's a queer sort of name to give to a place. Why did they give it a name like that for?" "Tiburones is the name is its name, and tiburones is its nature," said another. "It's the Spanish word for sharks." Having decided Kay's fate, they chained his wrists to one rail and his ankles to another, so that he sat in great discomfort with his hands behind him and the back of his neck being scorched by the sun. After this, all hands drank their rum, fired their pistols, and flung sea boots at Kay's head. In a few minutes the ship glided into the quiet of the anchorage. They lowered a boat, thrust Kay into it, and rowed him towards the shore. From time to time an enormous shark would heave silently alongside, just out of reach at the end of the oars. It would turn over on its back a little to show its awful mouth, with the 3 rows of teeth. "Now, out you get, you shadowless sculpin," the captain said, and the boat ran into the sand. They pitched Kay out headfirst onto the beach. "If you look among the words," they cried, "you may find your brother." With that, the boat turned for the ship, leaving Kay alone on the desolate beach. The sun was exceedingly hot, and he was without a hat. As he walked towards the shelter of the forest, he turned to look at the ship, which was now heading for sea again. A bright flash darted from her stern port. He saw a column of water leap up from the bay, then another and another, as the shot skimmed towards him. Just as the bang of the report reached him, the shot buried itself in the beach close to where he had been standing. "Well, here I am, marooned," Kay said to himself, keeping well under cover, lest they should send another cannonball. "I wonder what I could do for food." There were some coconuts on some cocoa palms, but no monkeys to hurl them to him. He saw no goats, and he had no pin about him with which to make a fishhook. Now that the ship had gone, he thought that perhaps he would be able to creep down to the rocks to find shellfish. But they were so tightly stuck that he could not get them away. He remembered reading of a sailor who used his white toes as bait, dangling them into the sea to attract fish, and then spearing them as they came to nibble. Finding a rocky pool, he drew off his shoe and stocking, slipped his foot into the water and gently waggled it about. Suddenly what seemed like the bottom of the pool rose up in a mass towards him. He snatched his foot from the water and fled, but had time to see two terrible jaws snap within an inch of his foot as he withdrew it. The worst of it was that in his hurry he knocked his shoe into the pool. Now I've only got one shoe, Kay thought, and shipwrecked seamen have to eat their shoes. Oh, come, animals can live on grass and leaves and things. Why shouldn't I? He picked up some leaves, but they were so bitter that they shriveled his mouth up. Then he picked some grass, but this was very salty. He seemed to remember that some shipwrecked men, of whom he had read, had made elegant fishhooks of seashells. There were many of those, but he could not find the knack of cracking them into hooks. Well, he thought at last, perhaps this island is inhabited. There may be people somewhere or other who will help me. He set off to walk through the jungle, holding his one shoe in his hand as his only supply of food. The going was extraordinarily rough, with many fallen trees and branches, but he had not gone long before a most appetizing smell came to his nose. He went on with increasing hope that he would soon come to someone who would feed him. On ahead he heard the pleasant splash of falling water, and at this point, somewhere beyond him in the jungle, an old man's wavering voice began to sing a song. As from the first it seemed a very queer song. Kay sat down on a fallen tree and listened to it. And what is worse, I sometimes fear, it isn't now at all that's here. No, but next year, or worse, some year beyond, in future time unkenned, unconned, as far away as Trebizond from Toady we're. And this I ask and fain would know, will now be in a day or so, in this time next year, now or no, or did now happen long ago, long ago. Reassured by something in the voice that the singer would not harm him, Kay rose from his log and pushed through the scrub until he came to a clearing where he saw the mouth of a cave. A bubbling spring falling down some rocks into a rocky pool, and an old man sitting beside a fire toasting 2 bananas upon skewers, which he held one in each hand. Kay limped towards the old man, who looked at him and said, "Italiano?" Kay shook his head. The man said, "Francais." Kay, who was on shore aground here, said, "Non, English." The old man looked at him in astonishment and interest. "Come, then," he said kindly. "Sit, eat, drink." He took the toasted bananas from the skewers, put them on a broadleaf, and offered them to Kay, with a big shellful of water. Kay, who was really very, very hungry, ate the bananas with thankfulness. Looking at the old man who had welcomed him, he was extraordinarily old, ragged-haired and tattered-bearded. He was dressed like a scarecrow in a most strange patchwork of palm leaves, pieces of old sail, and what may once have been leather. Presently the man spoke in strange English. "You excuse me," the man said. "Make pardon. What year in Anno Domini is this?" 1935, Kay said. "What you say? 1900? Yes, Kay said, opening his hands 3 times and then showing 4 fingers. 1935. In the future or in the present? In the present, Kay said. Oh, said the old man. What a thing is time. I have got lost in time. Tell me, please, sir, Kay said with interest. Are you Mr. Arnold of Toady?
I was once young Englishman, he said, but that was when I belonged to the year of our Lord, which I went out of by my own act. I would have none of it. I went back into the past.
Why did you go back into the past? Kay asked.
Why? Arnold said. Because of the dullness of the time in which I was born. But tell me, you say you are English? You will please excuse and pardon. The English I have never seen. It is true that we Italians conquered the land and have a legend that the English are like rabbits, in that their front teeth stick out, but that they are unlike rabbits in that they have tails. You are strange people.
We haven't tails, Kay said.
The fact is well known, Arnold said. You ask me why I went back into the past. In my young days, life in my country was tedious to a man of thought. I made a way to get back into the past. A certain box. You may not credit it, but a man came all the way from Spain to offer me the elixir of life in exchange for it. He gave me a sip of the elixir, and I let him see my box. But I would not make the exchange.
Do you know, I have your box of delights at present, Kay said. It belongs really to the man who came to you with the elixir.
It is a trivial toy, Arnold said. I ought to have let that Spaniard take it, and had his elixir in exchange and drunken deep of it. Then I could have gone on and on with Alexander. Permit me to offer you these raisins. Alexander used raisins in his campaign.
Tell me, in the time that you know, do they speak much of Alexander the Great?
He is mentioned sometimes.
Pardon me.
Imagine it, Arnold said. Mentioned sometimes. Is not that typical of European things and people? Rulers and ruled alike, childish and trivial, wanting in will. What is your Christian name, young man?
Kay answered.
You ought to change it to Alexander, Arnold replied. Young men should have prosperous names to live up to. K isn't a name, it's a letter of the alphabet. It is the Greek kappa. We Italians dispensed with it.
Did you ever meet Alexander? Kay asked.
A young man, Arnold said. I was weary of life in Todi. I made my box and wandered into the past of Europe. Oh, it was so dull. I got out of it as soon as I could. I went into the past of Asia, and suddenly in one of the cities of Asia Minor I first saw Alexander. You never met Alexander?
No, indeed, Kay said. I never did.
He was the finest young man that ever trod this planet. Beautiful, like young Apollo. The sculptors and the painters, when they wanted to carve or paint a god, all turned to him. He had only to ride down the street on that horse of his that spoke with a man's voice, and every man would come out with his weapons to follow him to the world's end. Think of his godlike scheme of making the world one kingdom, under one worthwhile king instead of all those dreary little kings. But of course you know of this as well as I do. You have seen Alexander.
No, indeed, Kay said, I have not.
It is hard to believe that anyone has not seen Alexander, Arnold said. For who knows what beauty is that has not? He paused for a moment, thinking of Alexander. I am behind in my time, young man. I was in the Anno Domini, and then I went back into the past, and the Anno Domini has moved on, and I have only partly moved on. Or perhaps I've moved on too far, if you understand.
I think I do partly understand, Kay said.
What was the race that you said you belonged to, young man?
The English, Kay said.
Some very small, unimportant race, Arnold answered. I had a list of all the nations of the world that marched with Alexander. There were no English among them. But allow me to offer you this pomegranate.
Kay ate the pomegranate, and a second one which the old man offered.
Now, there was one special thing about Alexander that I have not told you. When I have told you this, you will understand why it was that his soldiers thought that he was a god. We were marching across a burning waste. Whether it was the Chorasmian waste or the Acheronian waste, I cannot now be sure. It may have been the Gedrosian waste. Know only that it was a burning, a pitiless desert of glare and death and dead men's bones. The sand stretched, the sky arched, glare below, glare above, and the moon at night in terrible cold with jackals howling. Some men's tongues shrivelled dry and dropped out with the parching. No water there, no drink, only pebbles and buttons to freshen our mouths with. Now some of the soldiers found in a rock at dawn a little scoop of cold water. They thought, now we will win promotion for ourselves by taking this to Alexander. So they brought it to him. It was not more than is in this shell here, but in that place under the sun it was life itself. Did Alexander drink it and give those men promotion? He was as thirsty as any soldier there. No, he said, I will not touch what I cannot share with my men, and he poured it out in the sand to his fortune. Allow me now to recommend to you this egg of the island pheasant, which I have baked for you. For salt, here is the salt of the sea, and for bread, this meal of pounded almond. Eat, eat, for the young can enjoy what they eat. Presently, young man, I shall perfect yet another box, much greater than any I have made yet. I entered the past of Europe by one box, I entered the past of Asia by another, but with this third box I will go after Alexander where he rides, on some planet in some starry place in heaven. I will harness the comets for him, and we will come down, young man, and we will sweep away all these paltry kings and you English with tails.
We haven't got tails, Kay said.
You know nothing even of your own race, Arnold said angrily, and you dare to presume to speak of Alexander. By this time Kay was terrified of Arnold of Toady, this extraordinary figure of fun, whose matted beard was stuck with twigs and leaves, and who was now standing with flaming eyes, glaring down at Kay. Mad as a hatter, Kay thought. Now he will probably tear me piecemeal. At this instant he heard himself called, Kay, Kay. There, behind him in the little bay of the sea, so bright and beautiful, were two figures whom he saw to be Herne the hunter and the woman of the oak tree. On their left hands were those curious rings with the long ways crosses upon them. Come, Kay, they said, we can take you home. You must not be lost in the past in this way.
Could you take Arnold of Toady too? He said. He has been most awfully kind to me.
Yes, they said, let him come.
Kay did not quite see how they were to come, but when they reached the beach, the two called out, and out of the sea there came tumbling the most beautiful dolphins, drawing a chariot made of one big seashell of the colour of mother of pearl. By the side of these were 3 bigger dolphins, one with no saddle for Herne the hunter, 2 with high-backed saddles of white and scarlet coral, and stirrups and reins for amber beads for Kay and Arnold.
You will mount these, Kay,
the lady said as she stepped into her chariot and gathered the long reins of seaweed.
Then follow me.
Kay, Herne, and Arnold mounted, and at once the dolphins leaped from the water, plunged in again, and leaped out on the long rush towards home, while the woman called to the team and sang to them.
Come, flying fish, come whales, come mermaids with bright scales, come gulls that ride on gales, and albatrosses that no gale tosses.
As they sped, the mermaids shot to the surface beside them. Many white, grey, and gleaming birds swooped out of heaven to them. The whales surged out from below, snorting out glittering fountains. With little wickering flickers, the flying fish leaped beside them like tiny silver arrows. It was exquisite to feel the dolphins quivering to the leap, and to surge upwards into the bright light, with flying fish sparkling on each side. Then to surge down into the water, scattering the spray like bright fire. In the thrill and delight of the leaping journey, Kay fell asleep. He was presently aware of Arnold getting off his dolphin at Tibbs Wharf near the Lock and Key. He half opened his eyes, thought he heard the church bells chime, and then woke up drowsily at Seekings under the valance of the dressing table, where the box lay on the floor. He went down to lunch. "Well, Kay," Jemima said after a while, "you have seemed to be half asleep ever since lunch began. Are you going to say something?" "Say something?" Kay asked. "Where is Arnold?" "Arnold?" they said. "Who's Arnold?" "It's very odd," Kay said, and went to the window to pull himself together. There, at the top of the garden, was a strange figure of fun, dressed seemingly in old leather, bits of sails and palm leaf, staring with admiration at the church tower. Kay hurried out to speak to him, but he was no longer there. Thank you.